Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 224 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL, and I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Saturday morning spread. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, it's the morning after the Super Bowl. I don't know if we probably don't call this early, but I'm sure we were up late last night. We're up early podcasting this morning. How much sleep did you get last night?
Oh, I got plenty. I got fine sleep last night, but I got to tell you, usually you have a great Super Bowl, or not a great Super. Yeah, not that we usually have a great Super Bowl, but you have a good game, you have a normal game, or a great game. The next day, I'm sad. I'm like, man, it stinks that we don't have any more football. I do not feel that way this year. I don't know if that's an Eagles thing. I don't know if that's a this game thing. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is. I'm ready for the off season. I'm ready for, once we've talked about this, but once we get to June, I won't be saying that, and I'll be wishing football back. But for these next couple of months, we've got free agency, even if it's not that great. We've got draft stuff, obviously, which we'll talk about going forward on this pod. I don't have the same post-football depression I usually do today.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I enjoy the season. There is a grindy aspect to it by the time you get to the end, especially when, your team's no longer in it. I always look forward to some of the off-season stuff that we do that we just don't have time to do, particularly our expansion team draft, which for those of you that maybe picked up with us this season, every offseason, we do a 3-week series where we establish protected players, and then we draft a hypothetical expansion team. And the under 25 teams that we draft, like, some of that stuff is really fun to do, and there's just no time to do that in the season. So I always look forward to that, but it'll be weird not watching football next Sunday. So if in an ideal world, if I could catch like a 2-week break and then like a AAA theater league kicked off, I'd be all for that, because I'll be ready to be tweeting through some NFL games again in about 2 weeks.
What were our expansion rules this year? How many people did we protect? Because we've tinkered with it too many times, because sometimes we felt like our team was too good. I think was last year the one where we felt like maybe our team stunk?
I think so. 2 years ago, we said basically our team would have probably won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so we brought that back a little bit this last year. I was trying to look and see here. Looks like we protected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like maybe we protected 11 total, 5 on each side, and then a wild card that could go either direction.
I think that's probably the right amount. I'm already
Kirk
excited.
Cousins ended up being our quarterback, so we probably did a better job with our protections this year.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things we do here on the pod. Obviously, quarterback rankings are always fun. Head coach rankings, some of the other drafts that we do throughout the off season. So definitely looking forward to all that stuff. And I have that Discord that I always mention that's very active with NFL fans. I like getting the perspective from some of the other fan bases that maybe have fans of teams that I've never really known people who are fans of. So it'll be fun to run some of those protections for like the Denver Broncos. And that's probably like a worse example. I'm trying to think of like a worse team than that, but by some of their fans. So we're not doing anything wrong to piss off any fan bases.
Yeah, I will never forget the first year we did it, and we neglected to protect Michael Carter from the Jets, and Jets fans were not happy about that. Which,
yeah, we've had a couple.
They were right. Guys slip through sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. It's for sure easy for a guy to slip through on one side of the ball or the other.
Yeah, so we'll have lots of stuff going this offseason. I believe we will kick off our draft coverage next week, which always feels like a Herculean task for me to start trying to get caught up on draft stuff. But Mark and I will be doing some, I believe, quarterback rankings next week. And we'll take a break here or there in draft coverage to cover big free agency stuff and things like that. So we will still be here throughout the offseason, but we are not here today to talk about the offseason. We're here today to talk about, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but last night there was kind of a big football game that was played, and we're going to talk about it. So, Mark, you gave the thumbs down. Didn't like that game last night.
Nah, well, I'll tell it. I'll tell a complete story. Obviously, I was more confident in New England, or at least to keep it close. But I didn't bet the Patriots plus 4.5. I just stuck with my 10-1 Super Bowl future from before the Super Bowl, and not too sad to lose that. They cashed the plus 450 to win the AFC, which was nice. But I had a bunch of props. I had I believe 6 props or 5 or 6 props. And it was looking like I might go over down the stretch of that game. And I would just like to thank Drake May for the stat padding in the fourth quarter, because going over 220.5 pass yards and over 1.5 pass touchdowns for May was very nice for Mark. That was a big swing in terms of the gambling nights. So while I could have enjoyed the game far less if I would have went like 0-7 on picks, I will say I do think that was one of the worst Super Bowls in recent memory.
Yeah, so at halftime, I was saying that, I was like, everybody's going to be complaining about this game, but honestly, it's just been unbelievable defense, and I don't think most people don't have the ability to separate, like, they just equate high-scoring games with good games, and low-scoring games are bad or they're boring. And I thought the first half was just a defensive masterclass. And, of course, I tweeted that and put that out into the universe, and then the second half happened, and the Patriots were just incompetent offensively in the second half, and Darnold missed a lot of throws in the second half. And so I think it devolved into the game everybody thought the first half was in the second half. But I quite enjoyed the first half. I liked seeing what Mike McDonald had cooked up. I liked seeing, the Patriots defense play. I'm all for, like, there's a difference in a low-scoring game because of good defense and a low-scoring game because of bad offense. And I thought in the first half, we had a low-scoring game because of good defense. And then in the second half, especially the Patriots offense just kind of fell apart. So I enjoyed the game. It wasn't the most intriguing Super Bowl once you got into the second half. Like, it was the most, before the Seahawks scored to go up 19-0, I was like, this is the most insurmountable 12-point lead I've ever seen in my life. And then, of course, they scored, and the Patriots scored, and you thought maybe they could do something. Overall, I agree with you, but I did quite enjoy the first half, and I'm looking forward to getting back into the defensive film for that one.
Yeah, I think the second half definitely ruins the game and makes it so that it wasn't even, competitive. And I honestly feel like it's hard. I think it's hard to talk about a game like that sometimes, because it's like everybody saw it. Like, there's not much like, here's what you didn't see, or here's what you didn't notice, or here's this take maybe you weren't thinking about, or this scheme that they were running. Like, so the first half was probably, better defense. And I generally agree with you on the point of, like, people just want to see 38-35, and that's the only way they call it a good game. I did think the way that Drake May was playing skews it the other way, I guess, where I'm like, man, how is this the offense we got in the Super Bowl? And I guess I'm kind of trying to think about, like, big picture things from this Super Bowl. And I think the story coming out of this year is probably that, like, defense won the year, right? Defense kind of dominated the season. I guess I'll ask it to you. Has there ever been a year with this many O-lines that are relatively bad to non-functional that, their team was still able to make the playoffs, or their team was still able to be relevant down the stretch? It feels like in the past, if you had that bad of an O-line, you were done. You were dead. And offense was so bad this year that these teams with these terrible O-lines were able to make these runs. I don't know what that says.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says that defense is catching up, and it'll be interesting to see the way that the pendulum swings, because, I mean, did you hear Shanahan's comments about the Seahawks defense?
Yeah.
I was trying to find him now, and I can't find it. But he was just basically talking about how, you know, he said at one point they asked him, and he said that, I know you guys want to know my opinion, but I haven't scored a touchdown on Seattle the last 2 times we've played him. So
We said you want to hear expert opinions, but I don't know how much of an expert I can be since we.
yeah, and he just talked about how like they can stop. Like he's like, if you can stop the run from too high, it's just a cheat code. And he's like, the Seahawks are doing that, and nobody's been able to crack how to stop them yet. And so watching that happen and seeing especially a guy who we both think is a real, maybe there's some deficiencies as a head coach, but who is undoubtedly an excellent offensive schemer, just not have answers, even watching from the sideline, which there's probably an element of like, hey, I think this might work, and I don't want to tip that right now. We'll see him twice next year, but just really cool to see defenses really step back up, and interested to see how that pendulum swings a little bit next season as well. But let's get into some of the stuff from the game. And so it's really cool to see. I think we talked about last week that we thought the extra week is more beneficial to the offenses than it is to the defenses, because you have time to cook up some wrinkles. And that certainly didn't appear to be the case. The Seattle defense especially roared back to life. So they have a really bad performance against the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and Sam Darnold picks up that slack. The offense rolls, and they're able to barely eke that one out to get to the Super Bowl. And then they come back in the Super Bowl, and they just destroyed the Patriots for 3 quarters. And it's similar to last year's game where like there's some garbage time stuff in the fourth quarter that doesn't really matter. But this game was domination throughout. And for the second year in a row, the NFC just dominates the AFC. But which I remember like 2 years ago when all the talk was how the AFC has the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, and they're going to win the next 10 Super Bowls and all of that stuff. And that just proved not to be even remotely accurate. But they sacked Drake May 6 times. They intercepted him twice. They forced a fumble. They scored a defensive touchdown. The Patriots only put up 78 yards on their first 9 drives, which covered the first 3 quarters, excluding, the kneel down before halftime. So this offense could do nothing. I thought we were on pace for a shutout, the first in Super Bowl history. I thought we were going to end up with the lowest yardage total in Super Bowl history, and of course the fourth quarter happened. But I came out of this game really disappointed in the Patriots coaching staff. I thought it was a really bad performance, and I love Mike Vrabel. I know Vrabel's not calling the offense either. The Patriots have no run game to lean on, which we expected, right? We talked about how the Seahawks had such a good run defense. They get 13 carries for 42 yards out of their running backs, 3.2 yards per carry. But what I thought is critical is, one, I didn't think they tried to take any shots downfield. And when you generate a lot, and you saw when they finally scored the touchdown, it was Drake May making an awesome layered throw over the middle and then dropping a dime in the end zone. Like, when it is so hard to move the football, just chuck it downfield every once in a while and see what happens. I mean, who cares if you throw a 50-yard interception when you're going 3 and out every drive anyways? Just take your shot. And I didn't feel like they pushed it downfield. They didn't try to get Drake May involved in the run game. He ends as their leading rusher, but he didn't really start running until the fourth quarter. I think going into the fourth quarter, I think he had like 2 rushes for 9 yards. And so that's been such a huge part. I mean, they won that Denver game. The only way the offense worked was May scrambling. He had big scrambles, and it just didn't happen in this game. And so I thought they should have done more to get him involved in the running game. I thought they should have taken some shots downfield. And then I will put this one on Vrabel. The game management was terrible. From
Awful.
Not challenging that completed pass on the opening drive, which I love how the rules expert came on and was like, yeah, that would have been a catch. It's like, no, it wouldn't. Like, if they reviewed that, that's absolutely not a catch. You just want it to be like, yeah, they made the right call. Like, it was really clear that wasn't a catch. To punting, 4th and 1 near midfield, down 12-0 in the mid-third. Like, it was a clear go situation. He punts again on 4th and 4 in the late third. And then, to cap it all off, you're down 19-0 and you score a touchdown. Choosing not to go for 2 is the most brain-dead thing I've ever seen. I'll explain it for those of you that maybe aren't there with me on that, because I was complaining about that at the Super Bowl party I was at, and everybody was like, what? But if you kick the extra point to go 19-7, you are still down 2 touchdowns. right?
Yep.
If you go for 2 and get it, you're down a touchdown and a field goal, assuming you can get a 2-point conversion on your next touchdown, right? You make it a 11-point game, which is a big deal in a game. I mean, it's 2-score game to a 2-score game, but it's a huge deal in a game where guys are having trouble moving the ball like that. If you can get a stop and get into field goal range, it's a 1-score game now. And you really risk nothing. If you go for 2 and miss it, the outcome is the same as if you just kick the extra point. You need 2 touchdowns. So it's literally a nothing to lose and everything to gain situation. I think I saw Next Gen Stats showed that almost a 9% swing and win probability. Just the decision to kick the extra point. That's baking in the success rate of 2-point conversions. Just the decision not to try was a 9-point swing and win probability. So I love Vrabel, and I've been a huge fan of the job he's done this year. He was awful in this game, and McDaniels was awful in this game. And obviously May really struggled, and the offensive line was really bad. There's plenty of blame to go around, but as your coaching staff, you need to be the one making the right decisions in those moments when you've got a second-year player who's seeing ghosts out there, and I thought neither one of them did a very good job.
Yeah, Vrabel was awful in this game. As bad as May was, Vrabel was just as bad, and you mentioned all the decisions, the not going for 2 being the most egregious. Actually, I don't even know. The one punt might have even been more egregious at the end of the third. And then there was the other punt that you mentioned earlier on when it was 12-0. There's just so many bad decisions that you can point to outside of the lack of aggression, on offense and not going down the field, which is Drake May's best, ability as a quarterback. There's so many things you can point to with the way that they coached this game, as they coached scared. It felt like in a lot of ways. So it felt like they came into the game hearing about how dominant Seattle's defense was, and they were going to try to win this game like 13-10 and hope that would be enough. And also, this is a little weird, but they had a chance to kick a 59-yard field goal on the first drive, and they just punted. Like, is that? I don't know I don't know their kicker, like the details on his length, but I would say if you have a kicker that you can't go 59 yards with in the field or in the Super Bowl, that's probably not the right kicker to have. I feel like guys are making 65-yarders all over the place. Not that he has to make it, but like I'd rather take the swing at, the 50% chance he makes it than punting. It seems brain dead to me.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of a lot of, and you flip to the other side, and like the special teams for the Seahawks was just on point all night long, and to the point that we had legitimate discussions during the game that Jason Myers might win the MVP, which would have been hilarious. But he goes 5 of 5 on field goals. He had a tackle on a kickoff. Michael Dixon, the Seahawks punter, pinned 3 punts inside the 7-yard line, and so the Seahawks, they dominated the game on defense. Their special teams was awesome. And then you get to their offense, which still struggled, but Kenneth Walker, who ends up winning the MVP, really comes through in this game. 27 carries for 135 yards. He had 2 catches for 26 yards as a receiver, named Super Bowl MVP, heading into open free agency, which, great time to make a statement like that on a national stage and then be a free agent. So I thought he had a great game, and obviously, he got a lot heavier workload than he normally does because Zach Charbonnet was injured. Was he injured in the NFC Championship game, or was it the divisional round? I can't remember.
I think it was divisional, but I can't remember. It was the second or third game, yeah.
Yeah. So also, here's another fun stat. Well, fun depending on who you're a fan of, but Drake May became the first player in NFL history to be sacked 5 or more times in 3 consecutive playoff games. So to your point about the offensive line, there's some stuff baked into that, generally if you're getting sacked that much, you're not going to play in 3 consecutive playoff games. But he did and continued to get sacked. And I don't think it was entirely on the offensive line. There was a lot of times that I just felt like he held the ball, and it goes back to the scrambling thing. It's like, dude, you've got to have a timer in your head. At the point you've been holding the ball for 3 seconds, we got to make something happen. And, I get the defense was awesome and there's nobody really open downfield, but scramble. And I just didn't think he did that. I know Next Gen Stats had Will Campbell down for allowing 14 pressures in this game, which is the most by an offensive lineman since 2018. And he allowed 29 pressures in the postseason, which is the most in a single postseason in the Next Gen Stats era. And we talked about Will Campbell last year in the draft, and you were particularly out on Campbell. I thought Campbell I thought Campbell was one of those tweener guys that you take him and you try to play him at tackle and see if it'll work out. And if not, I think you kick him inside. And the question for me was not will he be a good offensive lineman, it's just can he stick at tackle? And if you don't know that, how high can you take him? Well, the Patriots took him really high, and he simply can't be your left tackle next year. Like, you're going into this offseason needing a left tackle because you can't play Will Campbell at left tackle next year. He's got to kick inside, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like I've seen a lot of like, oh, he'll be fine at guard, and I'm like, after what I'm watching, I'm questioning everything with Campbell. Like, it's not like we don't see high pick offensive linemen bust, plenty as well. So it would be very worried about Will Campbell. I mean, if you're looking at it glass half full, I guess you could say, like, if you're the Patriots, you have to feel pretty good about the fact you made the Super Bowl and you might have blown the 4th pick of the draft. Like, it's unbelievable that didn't end up really mattering. I guess he was pretty good for most of the regular season, and maybe maybe he's hurt. He did get hurt in the regular season and came back to play. So maybe a factor in how bad he was is him being injured. I believe it's like the worst playoff game by a tackle ever by Next Gen. But there was Shield Kapadia in the last 10 years. There have been 33 quarterbacks to make at least 3 starts in a given postseason. Drake May's playoff performance among that sample ranks last.
Negative 0.44 EPA per attempt is what I'd seen.
Yeah, he and Shield said it at the end of the tweet. He looked like a different guy over the last month. And I think a big part of that is the fact that Will Campbell looked like a different guy over the last month. And Will Campbell was horrendous every single game. It wasn't like this was just the wild card or just the divisional or just the conference championship or just the Super Bowl. It happened all 4 games. And May got sacked 21 times in those 4 games total. And they were still able to get there off the strength of their defense and off the weakness of their opponents. But yeah, I mean, you can't help but wonder, what if New England would have drafted Membu? What if New England would have drafted Josh Simmons? What if New England would have drafted Tet McMillan even? I mean, if we're saying, well, Campbell's a guard anyway, like, you took a guard 4th then. So people would say, like, oh, well, you need an O-line, but I think I would say Tet's pretty special. And I would have taken Membu, and I had Membu O-line 1, but I would have taken Tet over any of the O-linemen. And I think in arguments at the time, people were telling me you just simply had to take an O-lineman. But I think Tet really would have. Now, if you're the Patriots, you look at Stephon Diggs and you're like, what's the future here? What's the rest of your receiver core? Kind of a lot of young pieces, but not the guy, certainly. Whereas Tet, that's the guy.
Yeah, you and I both had Membu above Campbell, so would have definitely liked that for them.
I think I had Campbell. I ended up having Campbell higher at the end of the process too.
Yeah.
I think I actually had him lower before. I think I had him O-line 3 behind Membu and Simmons.
Let me look. So you had, you had Will Campbell at 9, Armand Membu at 8.
Yeah. Okay. So
Simmons at 10.
I think I had Simmons above him and got scared by injury stuff. And I bumped all that, I think 8 through 10 up overall in general. Yeah. I wish I would have stuck with my initial kind of out on Will Campbell position. Not that I was in on him relative to the.
I had Membu 7, Campbell 10, Simmons 14.
There was weird Simmons stuff towards the end of that process that made it hard to even ignore.
Yeah, I think by that point I was firmly in the I'm so sick of smoke around the draft, I'm not changing anything else. And so I just left him. Let's go to a few comments here. We've got Darnold was so bad. I think Darnold missed some throws, but we'll talk Darnold here in a minute. I don't necessarily agree that he was really bad. He's obviously not what you are used to seeing a Super Bowl winning quarterback look like, and I think you get that by the running back being named MVP for the first time since 1998 when Terrell Davis did it. But I didn't think he was like prohibitively bad. He said Mayers should have been the MVP. He did most of their scoring. I would not have argued with that. I think you have to give it to Walker once he goes 130 yards. I think you also could have justified giving it to Devon Witherspoon. Then Yakko said it turns out maybe the Patriots were schedule merchants all along.
They were.
I don't think so. I mean, like, okay, to maybe getting like the seeding that they did. And sure, they had some stuff break their way in the playoffs, but you can't just make it to the Super Bowl because you had an easy schedule. Like, they caught a huge break in Bo Nix getting injured. And that's indisputable, and maybe they lose to the Broncos, but they beat everybody in front of them. And I don't want to write off or discount their season because they had an easy schedule. They still made it to the Super Bowl. And now, do I think they're going to take a step back next year? Almost certainly, because their schedule will be harder next year. And so many times we see these teams that exceed expectations really take that step back. Look at Washington this year. And of course, there's injury things there, and there's catching up to things on film. And you better believe that every coach in the NFL is going to be putting on this Seahawks Super Bowl film next season, except Vic Fangio, because he's like, I'm not changing nothing. My defense is fine. But 30 other defensive coordinators are going to be really watching the Seahawks film, trying to figure out what they can steal from this. And you'll see the evolution of that defense a little bit. Maybe 29. Brian Flores ain't watching that film either. He's like, I'm going to do what I want. But anyways, you're going to see a lot of evolution of that. Robster says that if the Pats pulled it out, Gonzalez would have been MVP. And Yakko asked if you do an all-22 review, was Gonzalez just mirroring Jackson Smith and Jigba? Per Next Gen Stats, he was in coverage on JSN on 14 snaps. So he's actually less than half the snaps. Actually, less than a third of the snaps was he shadowing JSN. Shadowing's really hard. If you're not going to play man coverage, it's really hard to shadow. Because all they have to do is motion a guy or put him in the slot instead of the boundary or just run him on a route that you wouldn't match. So a lot of times people talk about shadowing guys, and I think that's kind of almost a dead thing because nobody primarily runs man anymore, and it's really hard to shadow. That's why you see the Eagles do what they did. You got a cornerback weakness on one side. They'll flip their defense and play boundary and field corners, and they put their weaker corner to the field side, so it's longer throws and he's got more time. But you wouldn't see Quinyon Mitchell shadowing people, but you always saw him playing the short side of the field so you could push coverage. And so I think there's a lot of that going on. But Christian Gonzalez was awesome in this game, and I was so happy to see him have such a good game on a national stage because I think Christian Gonzalez deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as guys like Patrick Surtain and Quinyon Mitchell and Derek Stingley. Like, he's that caliber of a cornerback. And I think he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves because, 3 years ago, his rookie season, he only played 5 games and he got injured. And then last year he played on a bad Patriots team. And so I think this was a lot of national people's maybe first exposure to Christian Gonzalez, who's just incredible. He's a guy that I loved in that draft. He was I think he was 7th overall on my big board. He was my CB1 in that draft. And he's like the anti-Quinyon Mitchell because Quinyon never gets targeted. Christian Gonzalez gets targeted so much, and he just doesn't allow completions. I think the Next Gen Stats said that he was targeted 36 times in coverage in the playoffs, the most targets by any defender in a single postseason since at least 2018. And time again, he was just up for the challenge. And if the Patriots, he is the reason the Patriots were still in that game in the third quarter because he made play after play after play. And some people tried to discount that when I said something about how awesome he was on Twitter, which I understand. Most of my followers are Eagles fans that didn't like me saying he should be mentioned the same breath as Quinyon. They're like, those balls were underthrown. And I mean, if it's a perfect pass, maybe it's a touchdown, but he had so many good recoveries and was so good in coverage. So shout out to Christian Gonzalez, who I thought was awesome and has a really bright future ahead of him.
Christian Gonzalez is awesome. Yeah, he was unbelievable. 2 fingertip plays. Yeah, big play savers. And yeah, the Darnold thing, I think the next couple days and weeks he'll get credit. People will give Darnold credit for now. It's a great story. I think down the line, people will take all of the credit away and this will become all about the defense. And I actually think that's incorrect. I think we've already seen that happen with Jalen Hurts from a year ago where people have kind of tried to take any credit he gets away from that. Sam Darnold had to ball out against the Rams in the NFC Championship when his defense gave up almost 500 yards, or else they wouldn't have been there in the Super Bowl for the defense to dominate the Patriots. So he had to put up 31 against the Rams. He had to throw for, I forget what it was, but I think 350 yards, something like that. 3 touchdowns, no picks. And the biggest thing is, this is a guy in Sam Darnold who we've talked about it all year long. Seattle had all the pieces to go win the Super Bowl, but we weren't sure Sam Darnold could get the job done for them. And the reason that we were even more unsure of that is because he's not a game manager generally. He's generally a high floor, or I always mess that up, high ceiling, low floor guy, because he takes chances. He's got some onions. He makes some throws in some tight windows. And a lot of the time, that's going to lead to a big play, or that's going to lead to, a big time throw, a completion that not a lot of guys in the NFL are going to make. Sometimes it's also going to lead to Sam Darnold leading the NFL in turnovers this year. And he threw a good amount of picks, and he threw them out of 1 or 2 games this year, including one against the Rams. But then he comes into the playoffs and he doesn't turn the ball over a single time over 3 playoff games. So I want to give Sam Darnold a ton of credit. Not just, even in the game yesterday, was he good? Probably not. I mean, he's 19 for 38, 200 something yards. He wasn't very good. But I think that they realized pretty quickly, and this is a credit to him and a credit to Clint, that the Patriots offense was not going to make them pay. They were right to be, I think, pretty vanilla on Seattle's side of the ball with the way that the defense was playing, with the way New England's offense was playing. I think it was the right thing for them to say, you know what, Sam, let's not put the ball in harm's way. Because in the first quarter, Sam had a couple throws, and actually, I think 1 or 2 of them actually worked out where the guy caught it. But he had a couple risky balls in the first quarter, and not really the rest of the game. So I think there will be a lot of like Sam got carried. When we're ranking quarterbacks, it'll be interesting to see kind of across the industry where people have Sam, and it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so Sam Darnold in the regular season had a 5.2% turnover-worthy play rate when under pressure. And he was under pressure on 34% of his dropbacks. In the postseason, he was under pressure 41% of his dropbacks. And the charting isn't finalized for last night, but from the 2 games prior, 0 turnover-worthy plays. And you have a guy who led the NFL in turnovers in the regular season, particularly when he's pressured, be constantly under fire in the playoffs. And he turned the ball over 0 times. And he only took 1 sack, too, in the Super Bowl. So I thought, did he light it up? No, but he didn't make mistakes. And you look on the other side at Drake May. And again, Seattle's defense is better than the Patriots' defense, but the Patriots' defense is good. And so
support for this show and the Fans First Sports Network comes from Strong Coffee Company. Elevate your coffee routine with Strong Coffee Company's Black Instant Blend and Lattes. Both feature organic coffee, protein, MCTs, and adaptogens for sustained energy and mental clarity. With quick delivery and exceptional taste, their coffee is a convenient option and a nutritious addition to your daily routine. Experience a healthier, most productive day with Strong Coffee Company. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com and receive 20% off at checkout using promo code FFSN. Again, strongcoffeecompany.com, FFSN.
That's the difference. That's the line between winning and losing that game is Drake May melted down and Sam Darnold didn't. And I never would have expected that. I wanted to go dig up some of the takes you and I had from last offseason because we both thought, man, what is Seattle doing? Like, you're bringing in Sam Darnold. You can't trust that guy. You should keep Geno. And that all ended up looking so bad on so many levels. And so I couldn't be happier for Darnold. And I was glad that he ended up, it was a little rough at times, but overall I thought he ended up playing fine. And I was happy for him, to get that ring. And it's just a really cool story for him. Couple other guys I'll shout out. It's really weird, by the way, doing this. We're the whole NFL recap show here on the network. And so we're used to talking a little more surface level, like 5 minutes on a game. And once you get into the playoffs, it starts to narrow. And it's kind of nice to be able to go into games a little more in depth, but you hit that tipping point where it's like, conference championship games, there's only 2 games, but we can also preview the Super Bowl. And now it's like, hey, you can talk about 1 game and there's nothing else to preview. And it feels a little weird, but 2 other things I wanted to shout out. One is Josh Jobe, Eagles legend, who never was.
He was awesome.
Targeted 10 times in this game, allowed 3 receptions for 11 yards. And it wasn't just this game. He has the 5th lowest completion percentage in the league this year when targeted. So Josh Jobe, just another in the line of cornerbacks that couldn't get on the field in Philadelphia. Rasul Douglas, Josh Jobe goes somewhere else and makes a big impact. And so happy for him. And then the other thing I'll point out is Mike
Josh
McDonald.
Jobe, by the way, was a helmet sticker guy for me back on our podcast a couple years ago. I know I have some tweets about Josh Jobe. I gotta find a good Josh Jobe tweet to retweet.
What draft was that? Was that 22?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I remember he was
number 60 on your big board.
Yeah, I loved it. And what did he went? Was he undrafted?
He was UDFA.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, he was number 90 for me.
For him. Good for Josh.
Yeah, good for him. The last thing I'll shout out, Seattle, big change up. We talked about how offenses can throw wrinkles, but defenses usually don't over those extra times. Well, Mike McDonald, maybe a listener of the podcast, because he decided to throw some wrinkles. They had the fifth lowest blitz rate in the season this year at 20.7%. They blitz May on 33.3% of his dropbacks in the first half. The big one was Devon Witherspoon. He only rushed 33 times in the regular season, and he had not blitzed in the last 4 games prior to this one. But he rushed 7 times in this game, and he had a sack. And he also hit May while he was fumbling, and it popped up and turned into a pick 6. And so generated a defensive touchdown. The way they used him was awesome. Like, I know they showed it on the broadcast, but there's one clip where he's aligned over a bunch and he blitzes, but he doesn't just blitz off the edge. He actually blitzes through the B gap. And so just some awesome scheme stuff from Mike McDonald. Man, what a coordinator. Like, we're typically down on like defensive head coach hires. I was good with Mike McDonald because I just liked him so much in Baltimore, liked what he did there. But to come in and turn the Seahawks' fortunes around in year 2 like that is just really impressive. So shout out to him.
Yeah, no, first defensive play caller, head coach that's won a Super Bowl, which is a crazy stat. I couldn't believe that stat, but yeah, apparently true. There's probably some funkiness to that. Like, I bet that, there was a defensive coordinator, head coach who was pretty darn involved in calling plays, I would bet, in the past. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have that. I mean, Tomlin obviously wasn't with LeBeau, but I'd have to go through and look. That was a shocking stat to hear, but it'll be interesting to see if there is kind of that rebuttal to us and our theory about hiring OCs as head coaches. I'm trying to think of this cycle. It definitely leaned more offense. It was 6 or 7 offense guys, I think. Well, I guess Harbaugh's nothing. So I think it was 6.
We'll also see Clint Kubiak's going to be announced as the coach of the Raiders any day, and they're going to have to redo the offense. So we'll see if it's sustainable, because I think that's always been the concern. Not that you can't, just that you're going to lose the OC nearly every time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And you know what? That's kind of the last point I really have is it. You know what? Like, good for Seattle that they got this one. I think we're going to go into next season, obviously full off season ahead. There will be plenty of trades, plenty of draft stuff, plenty of free agency, just surface level. And there's odds right now. You can go pull them up. I think we're going to go into next year with less of a presumptive Super Bowl favorite than any year I can remember. Because Seattle has a lot of people to replace. And I think at the top of the list is the name you just mentioned with Clint Kubiak as being the most concerning one that's departing. There was a graphic out there of JSN's, all the routes he's run this year. And it's just like, how could you look at that and not be so impressed with what Clint's done, even just specifically with JSN, making him maybe the best player in football. But you have Clint Kubiak. Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker is a free agent. Rashid Shaheed, who you just traded for, who was a pretty important piece down the stretch, is a free agent. Boye Mafe, pass rusher for them on the D-line, as a free agent. Reek Woolen, who I think is hated on a lot, played 900 snaps on that defense this year as the best defense in football. Even if, I've seen a lot of Seahawks fans saying, like, good riddance, and it's like, you just want a Super Bowl, whatever.
Yeah.
But I've seen people saying they won't pay him. I mean, okay, cool. You still have to replace those 900 snaps. Is Josh Jobe going to be that good again? Like, I think there's a lot of pieces of that Seattle team, not to bring up the Sam Darnold of it all either, but I think he's probably, we'll see. We'll see how volatile he is. Obviously 2 straight years of pretty darn good production from him. But, I mean, no one's shocked if the Seahawks go 9-8 or 10-7 next year and are, a wild card or even miss the playoffs, I guess, in a different way than past champions.
defense is not, we know how hard it is for defensive performance to be sticky year over year. And so when you're going to win with an elite defense, it's fun to watch. It can be a little hard to sustain. So, and we'll see. Obviously, they're in a ridiculous division too, with San Fran for the 3 weeks that they're healthy, and the Rams. Once we get through the training camp, Matthew Stafford's back, might need a steel rod inserted in it. Scare that never comes to fruition. And
the post-Gannon Cardinals.
I don't know if post-Gannon is going to be enough to make the Cardinals relevant in that division. But, and then on the Patriots side, I'll just kind of end with this, I guess. I mean, it was a fantastic year for the Patriots to jump from a 4-win team to a 14-win team in year 2 with May, year 1 with Vrabel. Mark and I said time and time again throughout the season, like they're playing so well, but the roster is just not there yet. The roster is just not that talented yet. And I think they overachieved in a lot of ways this year. I would expect a step back next year as the schedule is more difficult, but I will push back on the narrative that their season was all about just having a super easy schedule, because I don't think that exists in the NFL. There are degrees of difficulty of schedules, but easy schedule doesn't give you a 10-win boost. And so I think they've got a lot to build upon, but they've also got a lot of roster work to do. I mean, there's a reason that we were a little gun shy on them for a lot of this season, and it is the roster that they have. They've got some major needs at the receiver. They've got some major needs on the offensive line. And so I think they exceeded expectations this year, and I think it's a great foundation to build on going forward. I expect them to take a step back next year, but I'm still excited about the future of this team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how their offseason goes. I know that they have a good amount of money to spend. You know, do they try to get A.J. Brown? It seems like the A.J. Brown news is good right now. Maybe that he won't be on the move. We'll see. I mean, if he does get traded, you have to imagine there's like 4 teams that are really going to be like willing to give up what it takes. And it's like Buffalo, New England, Kansas City, like Baltimore, maybe. But it's it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. I almost, from a fandom perspective, would you rather have lost in the wild card round like 27-24 where Drake May played pretty well? Because I do think I get both sides of it, because I do think if you're like a Patriots fan and you love Drake May and he's like your franchise quarterback and you might have like a signed jersey of him behind you like I do with Jalen here, like the way people are going to talk about Drake May for the next 7 months is going to be disgusting. Let's just be honest about it.
Well, sure, yeah.
It's going to be gross. It's going to be a hard offseason for Patriots fans with the way people are going to talk about Drake May. And I'm with Shane that I don't want to wash away all the positive that happened of the Patriots season and all the positive that happened with May specifically. And Shane mentioned we were not high on the roster, which was part of why I was so impressed with what Drake May was doing, even if it was against inferior talent. I was against the schedule narrative vehemently. It's hard for me to even understand what happened to Drake May in that offense. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons you can point to. I think there's Will Campbell's injured. I think there's the offensive talent finally caught up to them. There's the fact that they played 4 top 5 defenses in their 4 games. The fact that 3 of them were in, tundras. They don't have that excuse in the Super Bowl here. My brain's a little broken, to be quite honest, about how incompetent the Patriots offense was for large stretches of that playoff run. So I do think if you're a Patriots fan who loves Drake May, I almost think you would have rather lost in the first or second round where he played well or fine, and you wouldn't have had to defend him for the next 5 to 7 months being like, well, he came in second for MVP. Well, he was really good all year long. And people are not going to be ranking Drake May like top 5 in their quarterback rankings this year anymore. Like, I think this is drastically going to impact the way he's discussed and kind of treated, even just going forward. I think he's going to get less grace that young quarterbacks get because they made the Super Bowl almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see the Patriots being good next year and people doing the same thing they did with Darnold this year. Like, yeah, but Drake May in the playoffs. And we need to stop writing the book on guys' careers from their first playoff appearance. And
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of extenuating circumstances we talked about with the defenses they faced and the one game played in horrible weather. I just think, like, sure, like, you probably would feel like, man, we're a really nice up-and-coming team. Drake May almost won the MVP, and seeing how that postseason transpired, maybe you start to doubt that a little bit, but I just think those reps are so valuable. Like, instead of next year, wild card weekend being Drake May's second playoff start, it'll be his fifth playoff start. And I think that's so valuable. I mean, so many guys are 6, 7, 8 seasons into their NFL career before they have a fifth NFL playoff start. So I think it gives you a lot of experience. It gives you a full off season to study up, to, reload, get ready for the next year. And ultimately, it's better for the team long term. It might change the discourse. Sure, if you lost 35-38 wild card weekend, you might feel better about May and those questions wouldn't linger around in your brain, but overall it's better. And I think it's hard as a fan to turn down a Super Bowl. Like, I mean, for 2 weeks, you sat there and thought, like, we might win the Super Bowl. And maybe that's not as impactful for Patriots fans because they had the whole dynasty where they did it too. But I just think it's a fun experience. And sure, it might impact the national discussion, but QB discussion nationally is a cesspool anyways, and I just try to stay away from it. So maybe that doesn't impact me as much.
Final question for Shane of the 2026 season to wrap it up. 2027 Super Bowl. Who's in it?
2027 Super Bowl. You can't put me on the spot with that.
I can. We're on a football podcast. At least it's about football this time.
Yeah, that is true. At least you're not asking me about UWE
Wrestling
or whatever it was last week. Let's see. Going through NFC. We talked about the Seahawks. I think they're going to have a hard time. Give me the Rams out of the NFC. I'll take the Rams out of the NFC, and I'll walk that back in training camp when they're like, oh, Stafford has to get epidurals because he can't feel his right arm, and then it won't end up mattering. And then out of the AFC, man, AFC's tough. The Bills, you just wonder. The Bills kind of seem to be a mess. I don't think the Patriots get back. The Ravens, new head coach. Who'd the Ravens hire again?
Minter.
Okay. Chargers. Give me the Chargers. Chargers O-line stays healthy. Let's go Chargers. So Chargers, Rams, Super Bowl next year.
We're getting Chargers. By the way, I'm already just going to tell you this. This is an early off season. I've been kind of, I was looking at some roster stuff for team needs already. I think the Ravens might be ready for a little bit of they've got a lot of issues to fix this off season personnel wise. And I'm never a Bengals guy. Never. I mean, I feel like I'm out on the Bengals every year in our preseason shows.
Remind me, who's their head coach? Oh yeah, it's still Zach Taylor.
He's made a Super Bowl, Shane.
Yeah,
no, I don't know. But I do think they're going to win that division again, kind of be back in the mix at least. Like I feel, and the defense actually, if you look at down the stretch, like it got better without Golden down the stretch. And if Burrow stays healthy, which is a big if, I actually think since he wins that division, and I could see myself ended up picking them to go to the Super Bowl. But as of now, we're going with a CEO Bowl. We're going Jim Harbaugh versus Nick Sirianni. It's McDaniel. It's Sean Mannion calling the plays. Sean Mannion will have accepted let's say the Packers job. Maybe they'll fire LaFleur because they lost Mannion, and he'll already be high. It'll be like Kubiak going to Vegas this year. So no, but I'm half joking with the Eagles stuff. Just like an early takeaway. If you pull up the conference odds for NFC for next year, Seattle's plus 500. They should be good, but we just talked about all the reasons they should drop back. The Rams are plus 500. They should probably be the favorite. Stafford's a million years old, though. Eagles are plus 650, right there. Green Bay's plus 750. They'd probably be my second pick. Detroit plus 750. They've got a lot of issues, in my opinion. San Fran is old at plus 900. Chicago's plus 1,300. They have a million reasons for regression. Washington, and then you have Washington, Dallas, Tampa, kind of all in that next. Not a lot of teams that you're like, that's a contender in the NFC.
Yeah.
Obviously, long off season to go, but.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have some thoughts about the Eagles I'm not prepared to share on a podcast publicly.
Long way to go.
But it's a long off season, so
But how
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And we will be here every step of the way through that long off season. Like I said, we're going to start doing some draft coverage next week. We'll take some breaks probably for free agency and stuff, but we appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us during the season. We moved our show from Tuesday nights to daytimes and back and forth, but you guys always showed up and showed out, so we certainly appreciate that. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 224 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode, which will be next week. So hang in there with us through the offseason. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at Shane Haff NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. NFL, and we will catch you guys next time. Go Birds.